All right, we're still on day 14 of Liesel's force fetch session, and she's ready to be introduced to doing field game drags. So I want to show everybody how to set these up properly, and then we'll bring Liesel back out to work this drag. But these are really important. If you're going to be running your dog in an HCP or a VGP, you're going to be asked, or your dog rather, is going to be asked to do either a 200 or 300 meter drag through the fields or through the woods in a VGP. So it's an important thing for them to have, and the whole idea being that the scent drags the dog out away so that they're away from your sphere of influence. And then, is the dog properly force broke well enough that when it encounters game 200 or 300 meters away, can it pick it up without any interference from you, without a fetch command, pick it up on their own, turn around and bring it all the way back and sit nicely to deliver for you. So that's what we're building towards. But of course, we're not going to drag it 300 yards for Liesel's first drag. So we're going to do something more like 50 yards. If this is the first drag you've ever done for your dog, you might want to do more like 30 if they're not comfortable with tracking yet. We have done some of this with her when she was younger, so I'm going to start with 50. So all you do is pick out whatever game animal you use. Since we introduced her to this squirrel earlier, I think this is a good time to reinforce her squirrel retrieving while using this for the drag. I like squirrels because their hides are a lot tougher than rabbits. So on test day, you're going to be using a rabbit for the furred game drag. But for training, I use squirrels a lot just because they hold up better. So I've just got a rope tied around it. I'm going to start the drag by just laying the game on the ground. I usually do kind of rub it in just a little bit, have a nice obvious scent trail. On test day, they'll pull out some fur or some feathers and leave it so you have a visible something to follow, something to put the dog on so you know exactly where the track started. I don't think I'm going to do that today just because it's got really short fur, but I will mark it kind of with my foot so I know where the drag started. Just green grass under there, and rub it in. And now I'm going to walk about 50 meters. For me, one big step is about 1 meter. I am going to put in 2 turns. If your dog is really struggling with tracking or hasn't done this before, just do a straight line to start with. But again, this dog has done some of these in the past, so I am going to put in a couple of turns just like a test would, and it kind of forces her to do that. The other thing to keep in mind is that we always want to do drags downwind. We've got wind kind of coming from the east today, so therefore I'm dragging to the west. You want the wind at your back as you're dragging. This will force the dog to put their heads down and actually work the track instead of having their heads up and just air sitting it. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and lay this. When I get to the end, I'm going to leave the squirrel sitting there. I'll take my rope off, and then I'll walk around so that I don't disturb the scent trail, and then I can go get Liesel and bring her back to start it. But for now, she's crated, she's out of sight, she has no idea what we're doing. All right, let's go ahead and get started. All right, so we're ready to start working Liesel on the drag we just laid. So when I bring her back to the spot, I didn't bring her immediately to the place where I dropped the squirrel, but rather 6 or 8 feet back. Want to get her set up. So what I like to do is use the same slip lead that I used to drag the rabbit or the squirrel, and I've got a slip knot on the end of it. So I just put it through my wrist. Liesel, sit. Somebody's already winding it. But this way I've just got this long length of rope, and that way when I let her go, I just can let go and she'll be using it. I'll show you how this works better in a second. But I like to use the same one I drug with. I mean, this reeks like all the game animals I've drug over the years, so it's another easy indicator to the dog that we are tracking today. We're going to go find something to retrieve rather than going on a free search. So once I have this looped on my wrist, I wind it through the dog's collar. So you just put it through the loop in their collar, double it up, and then I always put it underneath their closest armpit to me. So that'll be her right armpit and there. I like doing this because then the dog, as they start pulling or moving forward, it automatically kind of pulls their head and neck down. You're encouraging them to track. You know, especially when we start dogs off on a new task, we want to give them every opportunity to succeed by setting them up for success with all these different cues. All right, the next thing that I like to do is I'll bring the dog up to the location and I always blow them down into a halt. We always start tracks with my personal dogs from a down position. I think it's yet one more thing that makes it clear to them that we are tracking, not searching. Whereas when we're gonna go pheasant hunting or when we're doing some bird work in the field where we wanna see pointing or backing, that I always have them start at a sit and I release them from there. So all these little things are not necessarily things you have to do, but they are things that will help your dog if you can come up with that kind of habit or whatever other habit might suit you personally to help your dog identify the different tasks that you're going to ask him to do. All right, so we'll heel her up to the spot. Liesel, heel. Good. All right, here's her spot. So I'll point at it, encourage her to smell it. What is that? Oh, good. And then when I'm ready to release her, I'm simply going to take a few steps forward with her to encourage her to go, and then I'll let go of the rope. It'll slide through her collar. She won't even know that she's off lead anymore. Good, yes. Ready? So at the test, the judge will say that it went this way or whatever. So when you drag it, make sure you know your line. So I'm going to head her this way. Good. Want that? Okay. Good dog. There's my girl. Oh, good. Very nice. Good. Drop. Apparently there's stickers in this field too. Good job, yeah! Good girl, good girl. All right, sit. If this were a test, I would give her the game back after I leash her up, and then I like to let them carry the game back to the truck with us. So just so it's another reward, and they're not ever hesitant to give you something because they know that you're gonna share it back with them. I guess, do you want to fetch it? Yes, good. Good girl, but that was a really nice job. You can see how carefully she followed it. It helps that there's either no wind or very light wind and we were going downwind, so she had to track. She couldn't cheat and have her head up in air scent. And then she did overrun the first turn just slightly, but on her own then curved. Didn't quite get all the way to the second turn before she cut the wind, which is fine. They don't have to perfectly track here. The main idea is just to get them out and away from you. And then when she found the squirrel, I was ready with the whistle to call her. If your dog doesn't immediately pick it up, give a come whistle, a recall whistle, and that way they will immediately grab it and bring it back. But thankfully she did on her own and then brought it in. So that's why it was so important earlier when we did the intro to squirrel in the front yard there, that we made sure that she could pick up the squirrel on her own away from me and bring it back without me needing to call her, because at a drag you won't ever be able to. So that was a really nice first drag for her, and now every time we do this, we can make the drags longer, we can put in more turns or harder angled turns, and of course all the new species. And then every time we introduce a new species, we might want to shorten it up again, make it easier so that we can enforce the commands. Drop. Very nice. Good, so that's a big one that we'll be using a lot, is doing drag retrieves in the future. And again, for test day, you'll need to do this. It's just the distance will be much longer. It'll be 200 or 300 yards instead of 50. But I think that's a good place to end for today.